So, Matt, do you mind telling everyone a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? What do you do?
So my name is Matt. I am a physical therapist. I've been a therapist about almost 13 years now. I am from Mississippi originally. Like I said, from Mississippi. I live in Texas now, and I'm a diplomat in MDT and a fellow of the AAOMPT. So two pretty deep further educational certifications and things like that. If you follow me on Instagram and all that, I just try to be funny, and that's one thing I've been throughout my career is try to entertain and make people laugh and smile and things like that. And sometimes it comes off that I may not be that smart because I'm goofy, but I tell people I'm probably the most educated hillbilly you've ever met.
Well, I love the content. It's genuinely funny. And I find a lot of the time physio memes and stuff, like the humor, they don't always get me, but yours really does. I really enjoy it. And I'm wondering, do you sort of bring that to your patients as well? That sort of humor?
Yes, so a lot of it is based upon interactions and things with people, and it's really all it is taking a situation and you just kind of blow it up to some ridiculous amount. And patients find it hilarious. Like when they see the content or whatever, they just think it's just absolute, and they're like, "Can you?" Some of them are like, "Can you do one about me? Can you?" And I'm like, "I don't really know." Or the you didn't do one about me, and it's like, no, they're kind of based up, but they find it hilarious, and so that's I know, and the people, people are coming to us that they're hurting, they're scared, they're stuff like that, and at least if I can try to brighten their day a little bit with what I do, that kind of helps. And even coworkers and things like that, like we have our tough days, and so try to make things just a little bit funnier, just a little bit more upbeat.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really good mentality to have, I think, and I'm sure the patients really appreciate it and want to come back and see you. If you can make them, it's not always just about just getting them out of a little bit less pain. Sometimes it's about making them feel good as well, right? Just making them
Yeah.
have a laugh as well. So what are these interests? I haven't heard of these organizations that you're in, these furthering education organizations.
So the diplomat at MDT, that's through the McKinsey Institute. So that's the highest level.
Oh yeah.
That you get. So you cert and then the dip. It's 10 weeks of theoretical study and then 9 weeks of in-person training with senior faculty, and then a exam with senior faculty as well. And then the fellowship is a part of IOMT, and I cannot remember the Canadian one. It's escaping me, but it's kind of like the U.S. branch of that. So like the IOMT sets the standards and things like that for this further one, and so AOMT is a part of that. Okay. And so the fellowship was kind of through them. So it was just talking about patients that we've had, patient examples, talking about what we would do over the treatment process, reviewing articles, book chapters, and discussion. So luckily my diploma exam satisfied the OSCE, which is a big exam that most people have to do. It satisfied that, so I didn't have to do the OSCE like some other people. That's and awesome. And a funny thing as well, I don't have the OCS, which is the orthopedic certified specialist, which is a certification that we can get here in the States through the APTA. I got in before they required that, so I'm one of the few fellows who does not have that.
Okay.
So yeah, and I don't even have a doctorate in physical therapy either. I have a master's because my school was 1 and 9 left. So I have these like really weird that just don't like line up with what most people have.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I have this one, but not that one. They're like, really?
You sure you're a physio?
Yeah, I have that. So I got the license, I got all that, but like all these things, like it's somehow I just like skipped this one because if one was required, I just went to this other one. So
right place, right time. Just gotta bypass everything. That's awesome. I wish I could do that. I don't know if you know about the licensing process in Canada right now, but it's kind of a mess since COVID happened. You know, there was these students, or I guess physiotherapy residents, that were trying to write their exams, and I think it was 4 or 5 times in a row, because of technical difficulties, this licensing agency that administers the exam just failed to administer it. So people were studying, and then it would get canceled, and then they had to study again, and it would get canceled over and over and over. And eventually, they decided that this whole practical exam, which is like the OSCE, they just said, you know what, we're disbanding this, and every province in Canada now just has to do their own thing. So it's kind of a mess.
Well, I remember something with that guy that was saying like you get because you have to observe so much or something like that, and then he was saying something like y'all were just part of the furniture or something, and it was like, dude, it was something that he was making it sound like the people wanting to take the test were just kind of sitting on their rear end, not doing anything. And when they were like, no, we want to do this. But it turns out like the guy wasn't even a physio and all that. And I was like,
yeah, you know, like that's ringing a bell a little bit, like vaguely. I sort of remember that. Yeah, he was a part of some sort of organization. He was bagging on the physiotherapy residents, right?
Yeah. He was saying it was pretty much that they just like sit on their behind and don't do anything, and they were just a part of the furniture. And it was like, dude, you don't even have any medical background whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. It's shitty. It's shitty. And these people were like, I know I knew a resident at the time who wanted to take on a full-time job, but they couldn't bring it to they couldn't do it because they didn't know when their next exam day would be, and they didn't want to commit to a full-time job and have to study for the practical at the same time. So all these people were in limbo for about a year. Yeah. Anyway, life goes on. What can you do? So, Matt, there's a few things that we wanted to chat about. One of them, you were saying how you believe that in a lot of cases, a diagnosis in order to treat a patient just wasn't really necessary. And I agree with that, but I'd like to hear from you, your thoughts on that. So can you elaborate? Why is it not always important to have a diagnosis in order to help someone feel better?
So when I started with the MDT training years ago, it's probably been pushing 10 years. The thing about it, it was never about a diagnosis and learning. So you learn the classification. So it's derangement, dysfunction, postural, or other. And when you assess somebody, you come up with that classification. And it doesn't really, and they were saying like you're treating the patient and you're working with them, not the diagnosis on it. And I said, that really makes a lot of sense, because learning from school and then seeing people in my first job was noticing that the diagnosis was rarely ever correct. It just didn't line up. It's like, this is missing, this is missing, this is missing. And it was like, that's not really it. Or doing a treatment with somebody and it wasn't working, even though we have been taught that, they have X, so you do Y, and that should help it, and it wasn't. So going along, I said, I'm just treating with MDT, just listening to the patient, what helps the patient decrease their pain, abolish pain, get them better. That's how we're going. I was like, I don't really care what they put on there. I will put it on my notes, but I don't care. Then as I was studying for the diploma exam, found an article about classification-based treatment versus treatment-based, I believe that's what it was. And they made a point. They said classification, patients are able to change their classification. Whereas with the treatment-based approach, they're kind of stuck. And I went, that makes a lot of sense. Because if a patient comes into me, day one, we have a provisional classification, but that may change. So if they come in and they're better, of course, yeah, we're probably right. We're going to keep going that way. But if there's no change or they're worse, they could change classification. Whereas if they have a diagnosis, it can lock that person in to say, well, because they have blank diagnosis, you have to continue on that treatment, and you can't really deviate out of that.
Right.
Another thing that kind of comes up was that the diagnosis could be negative. That like a DJD, DDD, arthritis, those things don't change.
Mm.
Patient looks it up and says, "That's not going to get any better."
Mm.
But it's like, I tell them nobody stuck you with a dirty needle and gave you degenerative joint disease. You had that 2 weeks ago, and your pain only came a week ago. So,
Right.
so it would see that if we never really gave them a diagnosis, they had nothing to hang on to, and that nothing that held them back.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, a lot of the time we try and put people in these neat little boxes and we give them a diagnosis and we expect everyone's presentation to be the same, but it rarely works out that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I find, and on top of that, two people could have the same diagnosis. Let's say it's degenerative disc disease, DDD, and they could have completely different presentations. So are we supposed to treat the diagnosis in that case, or are we to treat the human and what we sort of see in front of us? And it's not just the symptoms; it's also the person and their beliefs and attitudes about their condition, right?
Yeah. I remember an early patient I had who had a diagnosis of spondylolisthesis.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 50-cent college word there, but like that, this guy and I started extending him, and it was decreasing his pain. And I remember the other therapist I was working with, he looked at me and goes, he's a spondy. You don't do that. I said, look at his pain.
Yeah.
And that guy was like, huh. Like it clicked in his brain too. Like, this guy got better.
Yeah.
And we went against totally whatever they teach you with that. And this guy got better. And that was like, really, like, that diagnosis did not line up to his issue. And it
Mm-hmm.
was not causing his issue. It was just a diagnosis they gave him.
Right. Yeah, it's like Adam Meekins when he had a disc herniation like a year or two ago. The only thing that or at first at least, the position that was comforting for him was flexion, which goes against everything that you typically learn, right? If you have a disc herniation and bending over will likely hurt, and that you should extend.
Actually, with bad herniations, often, probably going to get trashed on this, but the disc model with that. But people that have severe, if they really heavily flex, it opens up and it feels good. So, and I've had patients that they're like, man, when I like grab a chair and I like open up, man, that just feels so good. Yeah. What happens when you stand up? Oh, it just hurts so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, because you're just gapping that open on it.
Right.
And as a result, they may have to assume those positions and things like that. And as they resolve, they can start extending. Mm-hmm. But that's something as well. Talking to people as well, going into like discs, that could be something as well with diagnosis. That's a scary thing. Growing up in the South, we don't have a lot of health education, health literacy. To tell somebody you have a disc problem is super scary. That could lead to them, missing work, depression, all that stuff. You can open up a whole can of worms on this person going down a very bad path of their recovery because of one diagnosis. You got a herniated disc, therefore that person, I have terrible pain, I can't do anything, I got to go get back surgery, I got to get medication, I got to get shots, because this person is not educated enough and to understand that's not a death sentence, that's not a bad thing, but because they were given that diagnosis. So I don't actually ever say disc to people unless, one, they have the diagnosis from a doctor or an image and they're saying that. Then we're going to talk about it. But I never, if somebody comes in with back pain, never bring that up. And again, that's something people knock on the McKinsey people about, the disc model that they use, because Robin's early thing was the disc. It's you flex and it goes to the back and you extend, it does this, which has been disproven. But like I said, that's another diagnosis that I don't tell people because it will scare the snot out of them.
Mm-hmm. It will. You mentioned disc. There's a few words. Degenerative is another one. Disc is something that can really frighten some people. And some people make the argument that it's more about the explanation than the actual diagnosis itself, and there are pushes to rename certain conditions to something that's less, um, you know, less fear-inducing to a patient sometimes. But other people on the other side of the argument say it's not that important. It's really the explanation that matters. So when it comes to you explaining to someone what's going on, if you suspect it is related to their disc, what would be your explanation that you would give?
So first, trying to gauge the person's understanding. So to understand, is this person going to listen to me and value what I say? Because again, coming from South, they think PT that like I went to night school or just some Joe Blow that walked off the street. The doctor has the big fancy degree,
Yeah.
and they're going to believe them very heavily.
Right.
So there can be a where do I fit in their hierarchy of like um, um, authority, I would say. So where do I fit in that? Because if the some PCP just walked in and go, yeah, you got a disc bulge and just walks out, even though I spent a lot of time with them and we said like, no, it's probably not that, they're going to believe the doctor because the doctor is very smart and that's a belief that they come in. Um, but we just sit down and we just talk about it, about, listen to what their signs and symptoms. So if they're saying like, when I do A, it hurts, but if I do B, it feels better. It's like, well, maybe you move that disc and that disc heals. There's research that shows that bulges, like the worse they are, the more likely they're going to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff on the inside heals just as well as stuff on the outside. So a lot of encouraging things to say to people
Yeah.
about like this gets better, this feels, you notice this, if they bring up somebody like this could be mismanaged, that was a separate incident versus what you got going on.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to pull in my certifications and training and all that, I bring that in if as well to show like, hey, I'm somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So just trying to give as much to that person and make it sound like, no, this is not scary. This is not bad. So, and getting them to go, wow, okay, yeah, I see that. And then also a very, very important thing is to give them something they want. And I always said that, like if somebody's on the fence, you give them something, and that thing is to make them feel significantly better.
Mm.
So if a person all of a sudden we do repeated extension of lying and they get up and they walk across the room and go, dang, that doesn't hurt anymore. I just gave them something that just, you see that light bulb go off in their head. Whoa,
Yeah.
hey, you're on. Yes, look, you just did that. So then that gets them a little bit more of a buy-in.
Right. They understand that they can change their symptoms, that they can improve, right? That there's hope. That's an awesome explanation for someone that has spoken to the doctor and was told that something is wrong with their disc. Their disc slipped or it's bulged or whatever. So what about if someone came in to see you, they didn't see a doctor in advance, they have back pain, and you suspect that it is related to their disc? Does how you navigate that conversation change? You know what I mean?
A little bit. And again, maybe just listening to how they're talking. If they're very fearful
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, it's just going to get worse, and do I need to get surgery? Do I need to get stuff? Or my mom had a bad back, and my grandmother had a bad back, and it's like probably not going to talk about that because they are expressing a fear. If there's anything in the U.S., this does happen. I don't know about the litigious state in Canada, but if there's something about, is this a workplace accident? Is this a possible slip and fall? Could there be a third party involved? I'm going to pick and choose my words because I don't want them saying, oh, this PT told me that it's the disc, and I'm like, crud, I just got drug into something.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and I don't know if other therapists have ever done that, but kind of careful of that. Sometimes as well, if none of that's going on, the person's not fearful, they're not going through a third party issue, and they're just maybe just not getting it on what is going on, I'll draw a disc out and say, this is what we think may be going on. And you see when you do this, and this is what this does, and you can see it just starts to click in their head. that they can see this thing like, oh, when I do that, this goes here. That's really cool.
Hmm.
And it clicks in their head. And they're like, oh, wow. And explaining those heal, you get better, those
Yeah.
resolve. So you start seeing it in that. So it's really kind of gauging where that person is.
Yeah.
And because you don't want to tip them off, saying, oh, yeah, it's part of your disc. And then it's like, where are they? Well, they had to go get an MRI and they went to a chiropractor. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, they that just because of a word I said, it scared
Yeah.
them and they ran off. And not to say anything bad about chiropractors or anything like that, but that's still a belief here. Like chiropractors is fine. Some people, so it's kind of carefully choosing the words for the patient.
Right. Right. It's still being mindful of their thoughts and their beliefs, but also providing them with some hope, and rightfully
Mm,
so. Right? It's not this false hope that you're just giving to people so that you can placebo them into feeling better. It's that these things can truly have good outcomes
mm,
from a biological standpoint. As you said, the more severe disc herniations can resolve, right? But uh, so that's from a biological perspective. But if you give
mm,
people that explanation from a psychosocial perspective, it can also help influence their outcomes, right?
mm.
Even though it might be the same condition biologically, how they feel about it can completely change what path they go on, and can really change how they end up, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So the other thing that we wanted to have a chat about was that sometimes you don't need to see people as frequently as you might typically see others, right? And sometimes a phone call or a text, and just some like weekly or bi-weekly check-ins might be enough to sort of get them on the
Yeah.
right track. So, how do you determine how frequently you need to see somebody?
So that's the thing. So when I see somebody that calls me or they come in with pain, they're saying, I've got this onset of back pain or neck pain. And start talking to them and find out that they're still pretty functional. They're like, I can go to work, I can, do these things, but I'm just having this pain. And realize like day one, if we do a repeated motion or sustain, we do something and they start to feel better.
Hmm.
And realizing that this person, is already pretty active. They already have a busy life. I think really if we just get them on this path of just doing, whatever's the reductive motion that gets them feeling better, all we got to do.
Yeah.
And they don't need to come back, like you don't have to come back and see me in 2 days and me to go, okay, well, you're feeling better. Let's go start doing a bunch of exercises when it's like you're not stable. Like that classification is not derangement is like not stable. So it's kind of almost like you may have paid your copay or did whatever, and it's like, I'm just pulling stuff out of my rear end to have you do just to do.
Yeah.
And so now with patients and say like, hey, what we want to do is just to start resolving your pain, and I'm just going to call you in 2 days and see how you're doing. And many people call us like, hey, I'm feeling better. I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, I'm the same. Okay, maybe a video call like this or text, or I'll do a video and just send it to them. And they're like, oh yeah, that's it right there. And it's like, wow, I saved them time. You're not having to come in and do a bunch of unnecessary things.
Yeah.
And they're like it. So they're like, wow, I'm getting better. And then really once they become stable, that derangement is stable, then we may see each other. Okay, let's start doing some exercises and movements and stuff like that. See how you feel. All right, then I may write out a plan of saying, okay, I want you to go back to the gym and do X, Y, Z. This is what you're going to do. Just give them a guideline.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, like this is really good. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, I don't have to really, I just kind of give you, here's the out of bounds. Just stay within this playing field right now. And then,
Yeah.
as we go, we can go a little bit further out. Now, granted, if you had like a rotator cuff repair, ACL reconstruction, you're deconditioned or what, yeah, seeing in person, totally. But a lot of people for just pain,
Yeah.
just just these consistent follow-ups. Now, if you're really severe, yes, maybe coming back in 2 days, and we have to, have to do all hands-on and stuff like that. A little different, but I honestly think for the majority of people, stuff like this is it just opens up a world of benefit for them. That
Yeah,
that they're going to be more compliant to talk to you and do stuff, and they, we can interact at any time, and they really enjoy it.
for sure. Yeah, I think that point about them already being active is a good one. I know when I'm seeing patients and they'll come in with like just some rotator cuff pain, for an example, and they stopped going to the gym, but they're like, I really want to go back to the gym. And we do a full assessment and we determine that it's probably safe for them to go back and exercise. We saw that you could do a shoulder press, and maybe if you did 50 pounds, it would really hurt. But with 20 pounds, it was okay. And it wasn't getting worse as you did the set. You could go back to the gym, and if they do that, do they really need my fancy exercises on top of that to get them a little bit better? Maybe,
Yeah,
probably not.
I I was a athlete in college. I did track, and I had a very good athletic trainer, and I really kind of based this model off of him.
Mm,
I'm not gonna say base the model, but really kind of like he would come in, like when you would go see him, he talked with you, and he wasn't throwing the heat on you before practice, and throwing the ice. He would just talk with you, chat, okay, just assess you. Okay, go back to practice. I don't want you doing this, and he would be at practice, just like watching you
mm,
and knowing what you could and couldn't do, and we all got better. And he's managing 100 people
wow.
like in this manner, and it was like, how come we can't do that with the public? Like, you're just kind of just checking in with me. And then to see the thing of coming in to see in a clinic, you got to leave work at a certain time. You may have to find childcare. You're going to come in and, you have to give them a value of being there for an hour. And then they got to go home and got to do all their other stuff. And, people saying, well, it's a $40 copay just to, which I believe I didn't get a job at a clinic because I argued with the owner over that because they're like, well, the patient pays a $40 copay, you're going to have them do stuff. I said, well, if I cut off 5 visits and I save them what, like $200, like
Mm,
what's more? And then they didn't like me on that one, but
yeah,
it's like that's how I see that it would work so much easier because you could manage more people. Um, don't have to totally interrupt their lives. You are just in constant communication, and they feel like have a closer bond with you.
yeah, yeah. Almost that you care more. You care about their life, and you respect that they're busy.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah. And as time goes on, I think I continuously see more and more potential value in online PT for these sorts of reasons. That sometimes people just need a discussion and a check-in, if they're
mhm,
able to manage these things on their own. You know.
yeah,
Um,
and I
sorry, go
think that's a good thing as well because I noticed like before, if you evaluated someone today is a Monday, they can't come back in because your schedule's full till Thursday. You were waiting Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe part of the day Thursday to find out if what you did Monday was beneficial or not.
yeah,
And so if they may come in and go, I don't feel any different, or I got worse. Well, as if you said, hey, I'm going to call you tomorrow, I'm going to text you tomorrow,
hmm
and something happened, let me jump on this call with you and let's talk this out. Let's do this. And it's like we're not delaying that care now. Now we can jump in at those little flare ups or things like that. Like, I mean, I've had patients that called me. I know I use a lot of examples. Had a guy call me once that he is just freaking out that his back flared up and, oh my gosh, Matt, what's going on? My back is just hurting. Calmed him down. His wife was pregnant, was about 39 weeks pregnant. So the baby's going to come at any time.
yeah,
So he's very stressed at home with this going on, and I think it was partly during the pandemic. And so he had all this stress. And so we just talked on the phone for like 15 minutes and he's like, yeah, okay. He felt better.
yeah,
And it was like, do I have to bring this guy in and sit down and have he's got to pay a copay and I've got to move other people and you may be in the clinic, I got to, talked to him. He's like, "Oh, that feels great." Checked in the next day. How you feeling? Yeah, I felt a ton better. I was like, "There you go."
Right. So I want to play devil's advocate here. Don't worry, I don't think this way. But some people would argue, if they were a business owner like the one that you had a discussion with, that if you see people less frequently, then the business is going to make less money. So it's in the businesses and the clinician a lot of the times best interest to get people to come in more often, right? But we're sort of arguing for the opposite of that. So how do you reconcile
Yes,
that?
that is the hard thing. If people coming, if you're running a clinic and if you're a business owner, clinic owner, you have to keep the lights on. You have to pay. I got to have a salary. You know, I've as Zig Ziglar once said, you know, the Good Samaritan couldn't do nothing if he didn't have a job.
Mm.
I've had money and I've not had money. It's kind of nicer to have money.
Yeah.
You write a check, a lot of problems go away. But that's something that I do see. Like if people are coming in the door, you're making money. But if they're not coming in and you're doing more of this, you're not. So it is a very hard conundrum to
Yeah.
be in. And I also have an issue with saying, there's people that say with private practice, like if you're a cash pay, you should be charging 200, 250, 300. I know a guy who charges $500 a session.
A session?
Um, a session. He's excellent. He is amazing.
I'd hope so.
But yeah, he's amazing. That's what I've heard. I don't know if it may have changed now. But I feel sometimes like with that, you start limiting a lot of people when it really becomes about that, your expertise and you're charging $200 a session.
Yeah.
There's people who can't pay $200. They couldn't pay you $200 over a month.
Yeah.
And it is very hard because you have to work and you have to do these things. But I looked at it as that you could possibly make it up with volume.
Yeah.
So instead of, 10 people coming into a clinic, I may be able to make calls and do stuff with 20, 25, which the follow-ups and things like that are 15, 20 minutes long.
Right.
But that is a very hard thing, and I do feel that is very hard. And I'll actually talk to people like if someone is ever with my personal business, like, "Oh, I can't afford your rates." I was like, you know what? You need to put skin in the game. Whatever you want to give me is if we're doing. And I don't care if it's $20. I say because you now invested in what I say, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. But that's also how I feel. That is what if I felt like I'm put on this earth to do is to help people as much as possible. But yes, that is a very hard thing. I'm probably rambling a whole lot here, but looking at the other business side of it, if you are not, you could, not having a brick and mortar, and typically with any time that anywhere that rents, they find your medical, they shoot the price up. You've also got to, pay the other staff and do that stuff. You could almost run it on a much smaller scale if it was just telemedicine or things like that. You could just cut extra expenses to do those things. So that is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So I do see that, and I was like, I don't really know what it is
Right.
because getting people in, you got to make money, you got to pay your bills, but you want to make it where you're accessible to as many people as possible. So that is a hard thing to juggle.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know the solution. That's why I asked you. I was hoping you had it.
Yeah.
It's an issue with the way the model's set up, right? Like you don't really
Yes.
get paid for sending people on their way quicker. And like you don't want to send people away too soon, obviously. But if you can get someone to the same place within 5 visits as like compared to 20, arguably it's better that they only saw you 5 times, but you get paid a quarter of the money for that.
Yes. There are some models, like I know some people with the McKinsey Institute, they'll negotiate with insurance companies to say, if we have our, for back pain, you give us $1,000. They negotiate an upfront cost with a provider, or excuse me, with a carrier. And if you get the patient better in, for $1,000 in 4 visits, you make $250 per. If you get them better in 10, you've only made $100 per. So it incentivizes to get them better. And I do think some models like that would be very beneficial, where if it's like, here's an upfront fee that you were paid, so therefore as a provider you're wanting to get them better quicker. So that incentivizes, like, we're not going to have unnecessary treatments, we can do follow-ups and care. I think a model along how that would work would that may work in some circumstances. So
yeah, that's interesting. That helps with the insurance if there's a third party involved, but maybe just private practice owners could charge an upfront cost as well. Maybe.
Yes, and a lot of cash pay people I know, they sell packages. So they'll say like 6 visits is $1,000, 12 visits is $1,500. They may sell that, but then I look at that as well, that I'm trying to get you better as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So why sell you 12 visits when I'm trying to get you better at 2? I want to see you just 2 times.
Right.
Actually, me and my patients, I really only see him 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I was like, I see you for the eval. I'm following up. We may have to have one in person just to make sure you're doing good. And then the third, we're doing a recovery of function. And then I'm like, just call me if you got another problem. And I just ended up running them into stores. And I'm feeling good. And they text me, stuff. I am still feeling good. I'm like,
yeah,
cool. Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's great that you could get people feeling better in that short of a time. I feel like if you sold them a package deal and there was a cheaper price for 12 visits, people would be like, oh, that's good value, I get more for less. But it's not ideal to come and see someone that many times when the issue at hand is that you're in pain. It's not that unless you're a PT that's like advertising themselves as like fixing you and giving you massages and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I also see that a lot of the, some of these like cash pay, again, that gets really pushed, you kind of neglect the lower socioeconomic classes.
Yeah.
So if you're selling, a package for $1,000, again, there's people who, I can't afford that, even though that's a great deal to get, 12 visits or 20 visits. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that these people would really benefit from, it would be very intense and a lot that you have to do with them. But it's like, I can't afford that stuff. And it's really like the people who are very, have a high health literacy and disposable income. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm going to do great. It's like, yeah, because they're set up to do really well. But the ones that would really need it and need a lot of coaching and a lot of work and a bond can't afford it. And so that is a hard thing. You really want to help those people. Or maybe even having a model where you do pro bono stuff. I do charge this for this, but this I kind of work with. But
yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And again, that's something from growing up in the South. Like when I was in Mississippi, Mississippi has 84 counties, 82 of them are below the poverty line.
Really?
And yeah, it's a very poor state. And I happen to be one of the ones that was not below the poverty line, but still a wide mix of people. And so seeing the people that would pay out of cash, but then you got, again, people that couldn't pay you $10 for a copay. And as soon as you told them it was a copay, sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
Because that's gas, that's groceries, that's part of rent. I can't take time off. That's nothing. I can't take time off of work because if I'm not turning wrenches, I ain't making money.
Yeah.
What about childcare? And so it's like there's all those things.
Right.
So again, that model kind of comes into like, okay, step away for your a break. We're going to talk to you, keep you going.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be good if we could figure out a way to get them in more frequently, right? Because the people that really need it sometimes have the least amount of means to get it.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It is a shame, but Yeah. So we want to end on that high note.
Yeah, that works.
Lovely.
Yeah,
uh,
that's a little different. I haven't talked about that. That's something actually I do have a little passion, and I have found that out
yeah.
um, from being in Mississippi. Now, granted, like I said, the town I'm from has grown, but being a kid, um, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. My parents worked themselves up, but just seeing that the people that like, live in trailers, that you got a busted car, you're on food stamps, you're on assistance, their belief of stuff, and that these are really people who need help,
Yeah.
and they get neglected by people who could help them because it's easier to go to the nice area with the people with the insurance and the people that got the disposable. It's nice to go to them, but it's like these people are the sickest people,
Yeah.
and these people need the help. And like one clinic, my first job was at a surgeons. It was a group of surgeons, and worked for a separate company that did therapy with them. And they were talking about opening a clinic at a new hospital. That was actually I was in Tennessee because I lived around the border. I was working in Tennessee, and it's like, oh, there's new hospitals opening in Mississippi, and they want to, get in there with them. Come to find out, 75% of the surrounding population did not have health insurance, and they were like, nope. So, so with that, people are going to come in, get something done, and they're gone, and you'll never see them again. So, and then you're stuck with, you know, we did this procedure, and we didn't get paid.
Wow. Wow.
And then that carries over to the conversation about the health literacy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of old beliefs. The town, the two smartest people in town were the town doctor and the town lawyer, because they went to the fancy school.
Hmm.
That they knew everything, and there would just be these like misbeliefs that would get passed down, and it's like, oh, it's not a death sentence. Or again, going to those things, if somebody did have a disc problem, I can get on disability and I get my check and I can get that.
Yeah.
That was something too. So if I brought up, oh, it could be disc. Oh, yeah.
Right.
People will put themselves in constant pain to get on a disability, and to live like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no.
Right. Terrible. And like I feel like for those sorts of people, like you just want to say like, okay, we could put a lot of free content out there, and which would hopefully help them, and then the challenge there is just combating all the other nonsense that's online as well, because as you're mentioning, a
Well,
lot of mental health literacy is lower.
there's a trainer that I've been talking to a couple of trainers, and interestingly, talking to personal trainers. I know you talked to Augustus Bradley not
Yeah,
too long
Angus.
ago.
Angus. Yeah, he's also.
Angus,
Yeah.
but a lot of things with like personal trainers, people are just flat lazy.
Mm.
They ain't gonna do it. We live in a time now with a phone. You have access to more information than colleges had, through their whole college. Yet
Yeah.
things like obesity, diabetes, high blood is still high. It's like there is so much free content over there. People, they don't do it.
Yeah.
So it's like we can put up. People will say that, oh, it can help benefit. I was like, they ain't doing it. Like I'm telling you straight up right now, they ain't doing it.
Yeah. It's not all about knowledge, right? Otherwise, all the world's problems would
Yeah,
be fixed.
yeah. I was like, it's all right there, but it's like, no, they just don't utilize it. That's like I got some, anti-procrastination juice. Like, I'll set that on the table. I'll get to it
Yeah, it's true. I can't argue with that, but I'm still young, so I'm naive and foolishly optimistic. So my thought just goes to, maybe like if we put that sort of stuff out there, it will affect one person, and then maybe they could affect their surroundings, like the people
later.
around them. Maybe we could have some sort of small change, not on a population level, but at least in an individual.
And that's a big thing that we have to realize that we can make more change with one person. So if that person that you talk to or
Mm,
whatnot, you cleared up their pain, and if it's the one person out of 100 that you saw, how many people that they probably going to tell that you were their therapist, that they tell their PT story, their physio story, and you're the hero of it. And it's like I made a change in that person's life, and so it's going to spread. So
yeah,
it is everybody, I think, having to do as good as they can. And if many of us try as hard as we can, we're going to hit as many people. The ones that don't want it, you got to say, I'm going to save my breath. I'm here if you need me.
yeah,
Uh, you know, but the ones that want it, you just get it, and that's what you do with the content. Like you're putting it out there. You're
yeah,
just doing it, doing it, doing it, and you'll hit a point where you feel like this is all for nothing. And then like one person be like, man, that's really cool. And I keep going, you know,
yeah,
and just doing this, doing it, doing it, doing it. And you just keep doing it. So yeah, maybe, you find people that it helps. And it's just these ones here and there, and you just start trying to help them, and it changes them. And so at least you maybe help 5 people in your whole life. But it's like 5 better than 4. There we go. We'll look at it like that. So always
yes,
trying to be optimistic about it.
absolutely. Yeah, and even if someone never messages you, you don't even know. Like, there's other people that you could have potentially helped as well, and you might not
Yeah.
ever know it.
Yeah, like I know, like stuff that you put out. It's very interesting to hear that it's because, like you said, you're a new physio, but your information is like someone who's been practicing for a while.
Mm,
So it's not the crap on new ones, but usually new ones just spout the stuff that their teachers taught them. They don't have new ideas, but stuff that comes out that's like, wow, you're already at a different level. That's good. That gives hope for the future.
mm,
That things are changing, so things are different, and it's getting out there and there. So that's really nice to see.
mm. Well, I appreciate that, but it goes back to what we were just saying about how you never know, what you put out there, how it will affect someone. Because the only reason I post this sort of content is because of the way I've been influenced by so many other physios that have made that change themselves, that are trying to push the profession forward. Those are the ones that have impacted me. And, I just want to pass that along. So I
Yeah,
guess if you're seeing this and you're not posting, maybe start because, you never know who you'll affect.
yeah, and you just got to be you. That's the thing
Yeah.
that I think, like, we kind of going back as well. Like, the content I put out, people find funny. I was like, that's just me. I don't try to make it tailor to people. Have I ticked people off? Yes, and if I make you mad, it's even funnier that I made you mad because I can tick people off. I'm a lot nicer online than I'm actually am in like real. Actually, I'm not a. If you ever meet me, I'm not a jerk, but I know how to aggravate people. So if I get trolls, I absolutely love that I get a troll because it's like I'm going to tell you and be just the biggest idiot to just tick you off, and that'll make you leave. I don't want to argue. I'm just going to just frustrate you so bad you're going to leave. But it's good, like with information that it is coming out that there is the next generation that's saying this, and I feel like my career. It's like I said, 13 years. I'm 40 years old. My career is starting to kind of probably hitting its peak here pretty soon, and going to start going down. So you have to hope that the next generation coming behind
Mm,
is really doing so. I was like, I have to do whatever I can because the next generation, they have to pick it up. And hopefully I can set a foundation that they can carry and do, and then they influence the next. So it's like that's what I just hope is keeps going and going and going. And will everybody change? No. Is that a bad thing? No. But we're trying. We're trying.
right. That's all you can do for sure. Cool. Well, Matt, thank you very much for
Yeah.
hopping on. I feel like it's a higher note to end on than the one before. So I'm happy that we could sort of end it with this message of hope and just doing your best. And yeah, I
Oh yeah.
think I think if you have a good message to spread, go for it and be yourself while you're doing it because it will you could fake it. You could try
Yeah.
and put on this persona that might go viral, but it won't resonate with as many people as deeply if you were to just be yourself. And maybe you'll impact less people, but you might have a better connection with them, right?
Yeah, because you'll find that you'll have a handful of people that just follow you and do everything, and it's like I'm just going to keep doing it for you. If you try to do it for all the big time things, it's like you're banging your head against the wall. Everyone's trying to do that. I'm just me. I'm just out there. I'm just trying to do that. I always try to be the same person if you meet me in person versus if you're online or whatever. Like, try to be that's me. Here it is, and
For sure.
people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, you're doing well for it. Yeah, I know I do. All right, Matt. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me.